Hey, it's Robbie from Southern California. Look, yesterday was sunny. Today it's cold. It's 60 degrees outside, depending on where you are. I'm cold. I'm going to do kind of a Q&A. I'm going to go through soil again, even though I did it the other day and you guys watched it and had all your comments, which were fantastic. But some of them, I'm not sure if you knew what you were actually dealing with. Isn't this beautiful? I'm so excited about this. It's growing like every single day. As you know, oh, it's windy. I am getting rid of some of this soil that was no good, and we're just now in the waiting game. Now, here is the thing. There's a lot of green waste being picked up now in our trash companies. You know how that is. We've got to recycle, and plastic goes in one thing and garbage goes in another, and things that can be turned into compost for plants go into another. The problem is nobody knows who's throwing what in what, and all they can do is look at it. Oh, they see grass, they see branches from trees and leaves, and it gets composted, and nobody knows who has sprayed what with what. Okay, so some of that is getting into some of the material we are buying, and they may not know it, and we know it when we go to grow. Instead of having beautiful lush plants, we end up with either nothing or plants that just don't grow. They're yellow, they struggle, they'll sit there for months, no joke. That usually, and I'm going to say usually, is persistent herbicide. Once in a while, you can get the same outcome if the soil that you bought, the compost, was not decomposed correctly. In other words, not broke down at all. And by having no microbes in there right now, because they might have heat treated it, it's not going to allow your plants to grow. Why do mine grow in matter that is raw, you know, kitchen scraps and leaves? Because it's alive. It hasn't been heat treated, so the moment I do that, the microbes jump in there, the earthworms find it, and they get in there. But if you buy something that was totally heat treated, there's no microbes, you're starting from scratch. And unless you put in matter in which Mother Earth puts in, leaves and stuff, you may not be able to grow. So sometimes just by adding things in, you may be able to take something that wasn't done correctly or finished, and you could fix it that way. That is much different than persistent herbicides or any type of chemical in there, because getting rid of a chemical can take weeks, months, and sometimes, like persistent herbicide, could take years, depending on how much, the concentration, and everything. Like walnut leaves. People are saying you cannot use black walnut leaves. Well, as long as the leaves were and the tree is still in one piece, it is putting out a chemical that doesn't allow other plants to grow under it. I know I just jumped from one subject to the other. I'm coming back. But the point is, once the leaves are detached from the tree, then it falls. Normally, that chemical is gone within weeks because it's the roots of the plant. It's the plant itself, the tree, the black walnut, that is giving it off. That's why people can compost oleander as well as walnut and use it in a matter of weeks. To be safe, 3 months is usually, it's almost gone. By 6 months, it's totally gone. So there's different ways that you can do things, all right? Now, let's go back to the soil. So you've ended up with soil that hasn't been broken down enough, and there's no microbes or anything in there. You try to grow, you end up with yellow plants, nothing's growing. Sometimes you can just add in life to that soil and grow. Another thing that has been happening, some of you said, is you thought you had persistent herbicide because you got Miracle-Gro and nothing grew in it. It was terrible. It didn't drain. Now, that is something completely different. Let me tell you right now, I have nothing to do with Miracle-Gro. I have never spoken to anybody that works there or anything. I'm not even an advocate half the time, but the only thing I can say is I have used it for many years now, and I have had better luck with Miracle-Gro, the yellow bag, than I had with some of the other cheaper soils. That's not actually a bad soil. The problem is it's more wood chips than anything else, so I have to kind of treat that soil to use it. Though that is garden soil, it is not potting soil. I still can use that. The yellow bag, that is potting soil, I've never had a problem with it. Now, having a bag of soil, let's say your Miracle-Gro, because somebody wrote about it, is not growing because it doesn't hold water. Well, that's a different problem if it's not holding water. Yes, I'm trying to move out of the wind because it's coming up the canyon, and like I always say, we have microclimates, so it's a little less windy here, and I'm working over here today. Now, if you get a soil that's not holding water, there's something else going on, and that has happened to me. And I've had a few bags of Miracle-Gro that I bought, and other soils too, but let's go back to Miracle-Gro, that this has happened. If you look at it, you will see it's very dry in there. And sometimes I don't know if it's last year's soil, which is perfectly fine, or if they've dried it more for shipping, since, you know, shipping's very expensive these days, diesel and all that. Now, if that's the issue, you can fix that really easy. I have fixed it, and I've got videos on it. All you have to do is open the bag up and pour water in it. Start with 3 or 4 or 5 cups of water. If you can drink the water, you can put it in there. So you can use your garden water, your tap water, and then close the bag back. So just fold it back down and leave it. Let the soil reabsorb. Here in the United States, a lot of our soil has peat moss. Peat moss, though some people love growing in it, I've never been a big fan of peat moss, is the problem with that is if peat moss dries out, it is sometimes very hard to rehydrate that again. That peat moss doesn't want to rehydrate. It's not like taking a sponge on your sink and putting it underwater and bam, it blows up and you can now wash your dishes if you're hand washing, which I do. It's different. If you wet it, it would be like wetting a piece of cardboard or a piece of wood and trying to get it to soak in water. So by just wetting it and watering your container, your tote, whatever you're putting your soil in, see how wet this is? This is too wet. The point is, it won't absorb. It will just go through. It will just disappear. It will go right through the pot, and the rest of the container will be all dry, and you'll go, what the heck is going on? Well, what's going on is the peat moss is rejecting the water. It doesn't want the water. It's dried out, and it's gone back to its old state of being drier. So what you have to do is force it to reabsorb water. And I have found the easiest way, like I said, tear the bag open, cut it open with the scissors on the top, the whole bag, pour in water and fold it back and leave it for a day. Go back the next day, and if it's still too dry when you touch it, put in more water. You really can't put too much water in. It will eventually absorb it. So it's kind of like a sponge that needs to take its time, like taking a block of wood and dropping it in a bucket of water and letting it soak the water up overnight. That's what you're doing with that soil that came to you too dry. And there's a lot of reasons that could have happened. But then the soil's fine. This is why you have problems in sometimes your containers, your totes, your flower pots, anything you're growing in. If you let it dry out and then you go back to water it and you think, well, I'll just water it today. It all dried out. It was hot. It doesn't do that anymore. The ground does the same thing. It creates an area where the water will go and then down. It's gone. Boom. It does not absorb through the whole thing. It doesn't absorb the water. It just finds a little river, a highway to let your water out. So a lot of times, it's sometimes good with a small pot to soak it, put it in a bucket of water, a tray, let it slowly soak up, and then it will reabsorb. Well, that's kind of what happened to the soil. So as far as persistent herbicide, that's not persistent herbicide. That is completely different. It's just something you have to deal with if you get that. By constantly giving your plants, watering every couple days, as soon as you touch it and you see it starting to dry underneath, stick your finger in, then water it. But if you let the whole thing dry out, that's when you have a problem. I don't usually have any problem with the totes because they're always holding water. It may be dry on the top, but it's still damp underneath, so I can just go through and give it some spritz of water here and there, and it's fine. But especially when you're initially starting with a bag of soil that's dry. So that's another thing you can do. Kind of analyze what is going on with your plants if you're having an issue with soil. But like I said, I think a lot of the stuff that's going on isn't persistent herbicide. Not with, let's say, Miracle-Gro. They do, I believe, test it. I think with their reputation, they're trying to keep up with everything good. They have the money to test their soil. And keep in mind on that also, one bag that you bought a month ago and a bag you bought now may not be the same, because every pile is different. It's literally piles and piles, massive amounts of debris they're breaking down, and each one's going to be different. One may have more leaves, one may have more bark, one may have more this and that. Sure, they add things to it, but the point is, it's going to be different. It's not the same. It's not like a recipe that you're baking a cake and you're putting in a cup of flour and half a cup of sugar and a certain amount of oil and all that. That's not what's going on with plant matter that we're buying, our compost, because they don't know what they're going to get. And this is what worries me with the cheaper brands. They get a lot from the trash company. And, you know, you throw all this stuff away. This is just a dead papaya. But you don't know on some of this stuff if it came off a golf course. If somebody's got a beautiful manicured lawn and they have it treated with persistent herbicides to keep certain weeds out or certain types of grasses, and they only want to grow one type, and that's why they use it. It keeps everything looking beautiful. But in the meantime, you can't grow a lot of different plants depending on the type of chemical they're putting in it. And like I said, some of those chemicals can last for years. So I think, you know, we have to just do what we can do. I know a lot of you are now making your own soil. Maria is in Greece and she's always writing to me. There's a girl that really, you need to go read some of the stuff she writes. Being in a city with a balcony, she used to look out and just dream of someday living in the country and having a garden. She told me she couldn't have anything. She's in the middle of the city and all she had was a little balcony and she has no earthworms and she has nothing. I've been letting her know early on, you don't need earthworms. There's not earthworms every single place. Earthworms are good, oh yes, but you can still garden because you still have microbes. Mother Nature is going to supply you with the microbes that will break everything down. And I don't know if she believed me or not, but it didn't matter because she tried it. And from what I understand, she's got a massive garden now on 2 balconies, growing everything. And she was so excited the other day to let me know that she went to a flower shop and bought a plant. I don't know exactly when, you know, how long ago, but she bought a plant and it had earthworms in the soil. And she now, after all these years, she's got earthworms too. But she didn't grow all her vegetables she was growing in containers with earthworms because she didn't have any. What we need is just to have our soil alive. And yes, soil breaks down. Remember all the stuff I might have put in here? It's all gone and it's too wet, because off and on we have rain, and so I'm changing it up. I put it in there. I'm going to add in more kitchen scraps like I always do. I could even throw in some wood chips on the bottom. It's not going to hurt anything. And then I'm going to replant like I did all over here, all over my chair garden. I'm starting to plant now, hoping the weather's going to get warmer. And the thing is, we freshen up. Normally I don't take everything out, but this time I decided I wanted to see what was in there. Everything is gone. Everything is gone. Maybe an eggshell. But that's it. So by keeping our soil alive, we're dealing with a whole different growing system. And that's what we have to think about. I'm going to try to go through your questions, especially the ones that seem to be the same, because a lot of people have the same questions. And I've kind of gone through them, and some people love, let's say, Miracle-Gro, and some people don't. You know, my daughter uses it. She's had the best luck with Miracle-Gro. I even saw a video a few years ago. John Kohler did a test with Miracle-Gro and the expensive stuff he buys too. And he ended up saying in that video, I hope he still has it up, it was quite a few years ago, Miracle-Gro grew the best. And yes, they do fortify their soil with plant food, but the point is we can start adding in right away. You know how I do the pictures. I'm putting the picture back. There's the picture. I drop that picture in there. Go watch the video. And that picture brings the soil alive and keeps it going for the entire growing season. Because a lot of times we get, let's say, potting soil with plant food in it. But the problem is there's not enough for certain plants. You might be able to grow broccoli and greens and onions and carrots and radishes with it. But start growing different types of squash, tomatoes, cucumbers that are heavy feeders. In other words, they're looking for all the nutrients in there. If they suck it out and they get massive and big, but they don't have enough to now throw the fruit, that's when they fizzle out. And some of you come back and say, It was doing fantastic. It died back. Well, it ran out of food. And you can supply food to your plants by either buying plant food, which we don't do, but you can, or putting food and matter in there. And this is plant food. Everything, all this rotting bananas and eggshells and greens from the garden, that's plant food. Put that under the soil, the microbes get in there right away and start to break it down. Put a pitcher in there with the same thing. It will break it down, and everything that is breaking down becomes plant food immediately for your plants. I've told you over and over, I saw this when I started gardening here with totes, 8 years ago? I was dumping kitchen scraps in totes, and what was happening? Everything I was dumping was growing. There was no soil. It was growing into beautiful big plants and giving me food. I didn't put even any soil in there. And at that point, I realized Mother Nature does it that way. So why shouldn't I? With that, have a wonderful day. Ask questions. And don't forget to eat what you grow. Bye-bye.
Still attached to the
Oh, yeah.
plant. He's just eating along the stem like it's a piece of spaghetti.
And he doesn't care we're here.
No, he doesn't care that we're here. It's like he knows who we are.
We're right here.
Threat to him.
I'm right here. He's
Yeah,
right there.
he's like 3/4 grown, so he's like a teenager rabbit.
He is eating a strawberry. Did you need a strawberry plant? He broke it off.
No.
And he's using the tool lid to sit on. He doesn't have to sit on the wood chips. Oh, this is not good. This is what happens when they're raised with tool. There goes.